So hello everyone,
Hello.
welcome to the new day and new vlog. Today we have with us our beloved Muntasir. You must have seen that few days back we had to submit an online experiment in psychology, and I think it is quite interesting thing to do for us. So if we start about the discussion of what we had to do in that online experiment, to give you an idea that what was it about, and what were the things that we had to do, and what were the practical aspects of it.
So the first thing is for psychology. Till now, we have only submitted our paper.
Yeah.
So we have to create a report from one article. So that was the pattern we were following. We have already made some videos about it.
Yeah.
So we were accustomed to that. But then we came to know that there is online experiment. We are not sure what is it, but when we went to OLAT, we saw there are some zip folder.
Yeah.
If you download the folder, there is a jar file. You need to install Java for that.
Yeah.
So after having Java in your system, if you double click the jar file, there is a software that is open. On that software, you can perform online experiment.
Correct.
You can perform online psychology experiment.
Yeah.
By yourself or by other persons.
Yeah. It is preferable you perform yourself, one perform by himself. Also, I think if we start with that general overview, then as he said that we had to perform some experiments.
Correct.
And we had to include 6 experiments.
Correct.
If we talk a little bit about the detail.
For the software, there is various experiments that you can perform.
Yeah.
There is quite a lot. There are some categories. On each category, there are several experiment that you can do. From them, you need to choose 6 experiment.
Yeah.
You need to perform this experiment, and you need to put the summary in a PDF and submit it.
Yeah. And one of the things, if we talk about the detail of those experiments, then there are multiple topics that one can choose from, maybe decision, maybe attention. But the thing is, one has to fit those experiment in 2 pages. So that is also one of the points.
That is one of the challenging points, I would say.
Yeah.
That we had to, for each experiment, we had to write several key points. For example, the name experiment, the type of the category, then the purpose, and the theoretical background.
Yeah, theoretical background.
Also, we are supposed to mention the method, how we are performing
it. Correct.
And
the predicted result.
After performing the experiment, there is a summary given.
Yeah.
Here they mention that this is the supposed or predicted results.
Yeah.
As well as what is our actual results, the summary of the results.
Yeah, correct. So the sample format which was given to us, one of the format was this, as he said, that with separate categories one can define it. Also, I think one can also write it in a general way, combining all the points in one paragraph.
Correct.
But I think when we submitted it, we tried to separate out the points for each subtopic, so that it is clear what is the purpose, what is the background, what is the predicted result, what is our result.
More visible in that way.
Yeah, I think that is quite organized as well when we mention the heading points. But the thing is, when we did that, I think when we wrote first 3 experiments, then we assumed that if we have to submit 6 experiments in 2 pages, then each experiment, or after 3 experiments, it should fit in 1 page. But I think it got exceeded 1 page, and then we had to somehow fit because one of the font size which was mentioned in our report as well as when we were writing the term paper was 12, and when we tried to fit that, then it exceeded the page. So I think we reduced the font to
Yeah, that's one of the point I would say that do not consider it.
Yeah.
Because we haven't got our result.
Result.
I'm not sure if that is permitted or not.
Correct.
But I would say whatever the professor mentioned, the font, the regular font, try to fit it in that way.
Yeah.
It can happen that yours is already done in 2 pages. But for us, it was quite challenging.
Correct.
So we had to struggle a little bit about that.
Yeah, and also one of the things why we considered doing font size is 11 is that because specifically for online experiments, there was I think not any guideline which was mentioned.
We could not find any
guideline. We could not find any guidelines, because what used to happen was when we used to submit the reports, then there is a guideline PDF along with the sample report, or maybe with the term paper we have separate guidelines or guideline PDF, right? But for online experiment, we had the sample online experiment where people use different approach. But what should be the specific format? Also, when we mentioned like some of the reports, or when we wrote our proposal, then there was in the guideline mentioned that you have to mention your name, enrollment number. But for this, I think
there was no clear rule.
Yeah.
So the assumed font would be 12. So
Yeah.
we tried that way, but we failed. So we
Yeah.
we maintained the 2-page rule.
Yeah.
So now
So-
we will get our result and we will identify
Yeah.
okay what is correct and
Yeah,
what is wrong.
yeah. So we tried to fit in 2 pages because that was the only guideline that we were able to see, I guess. So our main, I think one of the main focus was to fit it in 2 pages,
Correct.
mentioning all the points, because the thing we were considering was if we further reduce the content, maybe suppose we are writing theoretical background in 2-3 lines and we reduce it to 1 line, then I think it might not justify that background.
It quite gets challenging to
Yeah.
summarize your format, summarize your information in 1 or 2 lines.
Correct. So I think, but we'll get to know like what will be the evaluation based on it, and also we assume that it has 5% weightage as well, because whatever report that we have submitted before has the similar weightage. So this is about the online experiment that we had to do. One more thing, when I mentioned doing online experiments, was that it is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Why is it interesting?
So there are, as I mentioned, there are several categories. Under several categories, there
Yeah.
are several types of experiments,
Yeah.
and they have various time of length. Like some is 15 minutes, some is 20 minutes, some is 25 minutes, and each at the beginning of each of the experiments, you have to give your name. And while you are performing the experiments, this is quite different. Sometimes you have to draw some lines. Sometimes
Yeah.
you have to memorize some keywords, and at the end there are some keywords, and you
Yeah.
have to select. Okay,
Yeah.
these ones I can remember. Maybe there are some images, you have to
Yeah.
find the difference.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some letters shown at the beginning, and at the end you have to remember whether they were there or not, something like that.
Correct. And also suppose an estimated time is mentioned, how much time will this experiment take, and once we did it, then you had to sometimes press key or remember some numbers, for example like a phone number, and recall, and they give you a score that this is the mathematical score or this is the word length, and then they used to show the graph sometimes as
Yeah,
well.
for some plot there were graph, but it was it was not possible to put the graph in the among two
Yeah.
papers. The professor mentioned that if you want you can add your graph, but that is not necessary. I think what we did was summarize our graph or plot in 1 or 2 line and
Yeah.
put it in your summary of
Yeah,
results.
because this was mentioned that you have to present the summary of results, so maybe you can summarize the plot or the result. So we try to shorten it, mentioning the relevant points. So I think shorten doesn't mean that you just maybe not mention the
if you read the
relevant
experiment
points.
theory,
Yeah.
the background of the summary, then you realize this is the key point or key part that I should to
Yeah.
focus when
Yeah.
there is a plot.
Yeah.
So then you can summarize it.
Yeah, so this is quite interesting that you have to write in such a way that you have to include the relevant details,
Correct.
including all the points, but in a precise way. So now, as promised, we'll show you maybe one sample experiment of how, like, we'll try to open the software that we used, and then one of the experiments we'll show you just to give an idea that how this works and how we perform the experiment. So now, as you can see, this is our COG Lab 2.0, and when we ran the application file or the jar file, then we got to this software. And suppose maybe you can click in attention and change detection part. Correct. So now here you can see that it is mentioned that the estimated time is 15 minutes and the background is mentioned, and we have to so if you read the background, then we have to detect the change between the figures, and the instructions are mentioned that if you have to press a certain key if you find a change, or if you don't find the change, then you have to press another key, and the how many number of trials will be there, and one has to mention his first name and maybe last name. So just mention anything, and just for an example, and when we click on do the experiment, then this screen appears. So if there is change, then one has to press the key C, and if there is no change, that if you don't see any difference in the images, then you have to press the key N. So if you start, okay, now space bar to start the trial and see. So do you detect the change or not, Muntasir?
I think there is no change.
Okay, then maybe you can just press the N key. Okay, so now after pressing that N key, I think the further trials will come up, and I think when we press the space bar, then you can go to other trials, and then you have to decide whether it's a change or it's not a change. So I think it's quite fun.
Yeah,
to
it's
do.
quite fun. And this is not the only type. There
Yeah.
are various types, various key
Yeah.
buttons you have to press.
Yeah, and like you must have seen that in Cog Lab 2.0, there were several names like sensory memory or memory processor. Inside that, there are several experiments that you can do and different kind of tasks. So like memory, like you have to recall something, you have to identify the chain. So there are different tasks involved. And at the end, after this, I think a result screen comes.
Result screen is come where the summary is given.
Where the summary is given. So from there, we tried to write the what was the methodology that they followed, what is the predicted result, because in one of the sections they mentioned that we predicted that this might be the result for the users, and then on a data you can see that what is your result, like based on number of trials you performed. So I think one of the things that we also looked for is the time of experiment while doing 6 experiments.
Correct.
Yeah. So because for some of experiments it was mentioned 30 minutes. So we clicked, and then we sometimes we saw that okay, it's taking 15 minutes, so we can just to choose this topic and then we can summarize it.
But one thing I would add, that even if it is mentioning that 15 minutes, it doesn't actually take the whole 15 minutes. Sometimes it is finished quite early. Even if you are responding quite fast, it might happen that within 5 minutes or 7 minutes you are done with the experiments.
I think it's just an estimate of the overall time that you will read the problem statement, you will read what you have to do, you will perform, then you will analyze the result, and sometimes in the results graph appears or the mathematical data comes up. So it's quite interesting that we had to do. I think this was the only experimental that we have to do till now in psychology, and I hope you also get some idea about it, how to submit an online experiment. As we told, 6 experiments, 2 pages. That was, I think, one of the main guidelines that we got to know, and then you have to summarize it. So that's it for this video. I hope you get some information. Rest, like, comment, share, subscribe. It doesn't take much time. Bye bye, ciao ciao, namaste,
Assalamu alaikum.
chalo.